right around the age of 13, for some reason, the gang life really attracted me. I started looking up to the older guys that were already gang members. I started wanting to be just like them. And I knew that one day I was going to join the gang. It was just something that I can't really say why. It was just something that I wanted to do. Right around the age of 13, going into junior high, is when I started getting arrested. I started experimenting with drugs. Marijuana was the first thing, but that was, of course, a springboard to many other things that became an addiction. You know, I went on to cocaine, heroin, and basically I've tried probably every kind of drug that's out there except for crystal meth, because that wasn't around back then. But you know, it all led to nothing but negative things. I went started going to jail. I brought a lot of chaos, a lot of pain to my parents, a lot of destruction, not only to myself, but a lot of destruction to those that were around me, those that loved me the most. You know, it's funny because I used to always tell my homeboys, you could call me whatever you want, do whatever you want, but don't you dare talk about my jefita, my mom, you know. And yet I was the one that was bringing more pain, more suffering to her, you know, not realizing that everything I did and all the decisions that I made were not just affecting myself, but it was really bringing her down, and it was affecting her. It was just, you know, something that I can excuse the language, but I literally took her to hell and back. You know, I started committing crimes probably at the age of 12, but I never would get caught for them. I would break into cars. Still a lot of stuff that was in the cars, stereos, speakers. Back then, you know, it wasn't amps, it was equalizers, and I never got caught. But I remember the first time that I ever set foot in a jail cell, I would call it was in Juvenile Hall, actually. My cousin and I went to LA and visited my cousin, and I was only 14 years old at the time, and we strong-armed a man, carjacked him. I got arrested for grand theft auto and carjacking. Little did I know until later on, I found out we had beat him up so bad that he was in the hospital for 8 months. That was the first time I really experienced what it was to be incarcerated. But from there on, I started using drugs heavier, so what happened was I became an addict. When I became an addict, you know, you're no longer using drugs just to have fun and just to feel good. Now your body needs it. And, you know, to get drugs, you need money. And so, you know, me not having a job and using drugs, I couldn't get, you know, I needed to get my fix. I needed to get it. I think like a lot of parents, especially my mother, she was more in denial. She couldn't accept the fact that her little boy was not a good little boy anymore. I mean, I don't understand how they didn't see, you know, I'm sure they saw it, but they, you know, because of them being a little bit naive, you know, my dress started changing. The clothes I started wearing were not the same. My grades at school, I mean, you know, they started dropping. When I would come home, if I would come home, you know, I never wanted to look at them anymore. I couldn't face my mom. I couldn't face my father because of the condition that I would come home in, you know. It was just something that I would come home at whatever time of night, or if they were still up when I used to come home, I would just run straight to my room, because I didn't want them to see the state and the condition of how I was getting home, you know. And I think that maybe they kind of turned their cheek a little bit. As much as they loved me, there was a lot of denial, a lot of denial. I actually have 5 strikes right now, and it's 1 first-degree burglary, and the rest are strong-arm robberies. And the addiction to drugs is what kept me just having to go out there and rob, you know, I didn't really rob people, I robbed businesses. And that really led to prison. You know, my first time I went in, I caught 2 strikes. Then later on, you know, there was a law that passed in 1994, the three-strike law. And what happened there, and to be honest with you, it's a miracle that I'm even here talking to you today, because when I caught a robbery and a criminal threats, which is also a felony, and it's also a strikeable offense, when I went to court, the public defender told me that I actually had 5 strikes, 3 prior ones, plus the 2 that I picked up. The public defender said I would never be free again, and that I would never see the streets again, that I might as well start getting used to that. And that's when I just didn't realize how big of a problem I had put myself into, and drugs was the main factor of it, the addiction to, you know, the need of, you know, having drugs in my system. Now that I look back, you know, it was my dad, to him being a good parent was just putting a roof over my head, making sure there was food in the refrigerator. But to be honest with you, I mean, he was never there for me. I didn't know what it was to go camping, to go fishing, you know, to do things, you know, with my father. You know, his whole thing, his whole world was his friends and his alcohol. He was an alcoholic. And, you know, a lot of the love that I felt that I was missing at home, a lot of the attention that I didn't get from my father, I actually started getting it from the older homies. You know, they would, you know, take me in and talk to me and school me a little bit. And, you know, they were always high and doing drugs. And so little by little, I kind of, you know, I started experimenting with it, not knowing that, you know, one day it wasn't just going to be, you know, a hit a pot here, a hit a pot there, but literally a full-blown addiction to not only marijuana, but stronger drugs, you know. And I think that I was lacking a lot at home with my father. I didn't really have a father figure. He was there, like I said, but, you know, I think I got more attention from the older homeboys than I did from my parents. Well, one of the first messages, and I think one of the most strongest messages, and I mentioned it before, is don't be naive about it. Get as much education as you can about it. Listen, the dress is one of the very first things that is noticeable. The dress, just the way that kid is starting to dress, is starting to look like, starting to act like. And a lot of the times, you know, you look at the kids' folder, those that are coming to school, those that are teachers, educators, look at what they're drawing on their folder. Look at if they have any kind of drawings that are gang related, because a lot of times they would put that on their folders. They would draw little sketches, and those are a hint of, you know, of possible gang activity. Look at their grades, as I said earlier. What is a smart, bright kid? Is he now not interested in class? Somebody that loved math, somebody that loved reading, all of a sudden doesn't want to read, doesn't want to do their homework anymore. That's a sign. No kid just stops losing interest in school for nothing. When they lose interest, it's because there's something going on. A lot of the times, it's either gang activity or drug activity. Well, I've been in Chino, I've been in Tehachapi Max, I've been in Old Folsom. I paroled in 1996 from Donovan State Prison. But, you know, let me tell you something that, you know, prison is not what it seems to be, what TV and movies glamorize it to be. I mean, those are just actors. You know, they get to go home to their families. They get to go home to a normal life. When you're in there and that door racks behind you, let me tell you, it's a whole different story. You got to watch out just to go to the chow hall and eat, that you don't get a knife in your neck. You know, Christmases come, birthdays come, your kids' birthdays and holidays will come. Nobody cares in there. It's just another day. You know, there is nothing glamorous about being locked up like an animal in a cage for years and years. You know, and I remember, and a lot of times that, you know, who took care of my family? You know, I was giving my life for my neighborhood. I would put my life for my homies. But yet when it came down where the, you know, crap met the fan, there was nobody there. Nobody went home and nobody went to my house and fed my kids. Nobody brought them Pampers. Nobody offered them to pay the rent. You know, it's just a big lie out there. You know, I have respect, very much respect for all the homies that are in there. But, you know, if we really take the mask off, we could all see, and if we're honest with each other, we know for a fact that prison is not the place to be, and definitely not the place to spend the rest of your life.